My name is Renee. I'm going to be talking about preventing abuse in VR. So a little bit about myself is I'm the CEO and creative director of Stumbling Cat. It's a local local Seattle-based indie game studio. I'm on the IGA Seattle chapter board. I plan lots of events, many of them actually VR related. So if you're interested, please look into our events. We generally have them once a month. I advise and mentor at Foundry 10. So I teach students game development and VR development while I'm there. And of course, I am a VR developer and enthusiast. So let's talk about, abuse. What is abuse? Well, it's when you use something to a bad effect or when you treat something poorly. And I think that both types of abuse are very important to consider in VR. Now, obviously, we've all probably heard tales of abuse in VR from other users in VR, but it's important to consider abuse from the content within VR itself. Sense of presence is really powerful, and the empathy and emotions that you can get from your users is extremely powerful. You have to be careful how you use that. If not, you run into incidences where your users might become panicked, scared. When you feel so involved in a situation, and the situation terrifies you, you get a visceral reaction. And so it is important to take into consideration what you're submitting your user to, and so they know about it. So some basic rules for checking that out is this thing that I call ICE. Inform your player. Let them know if there's going to be jump scares. Let them know if there's going to be something that a lot of people are scared of. Let them know if there's going to be domestic violence or drug use or death. Let them know if they're going to feel like someone's physically attacking them. Informing your player helps them prepare for these events. You should also consider the people who are using your experience, your game, and what they might be scared of. What might affect them strongly. Now, obviously you can't consider everything. A good example of this is one of my friends was demonstrating VR to his coworkers. And one of his coworkers, he put on the VR headset and put him into the balloon. Very beautiful VR demo, nothing really too surprising except for a whale. It turns out that this guy had a phobia of whales and became massively terrified. Broke out in a cold sweat, color drained out of his face. And it was only because people were watching and making sure that he was having a good VR experience that they were able to pull him out of it, until before the end of the demo. And so considering these things, not only when you're a developer, but when you're with people who are in VR, is extremely important. And finally, provide an escape. It can be a button that you press on a controller that stops the scene. It can be just informing your player before they start the demo that, hey, there's scary things, it's okay to take off your headset. These are things that are really easy to forget when you're immersed in VR. So, of course, there's the other type of abuse in VR. Here is a quote from someone who experienced abuse in alt space. It's a problem. Interactions in VR can be really passionate and emotional and scary and fun and great. But when you see someone else in VR and you see them move like a human, they're not a character, an avatar anymore. They are someone that has that sense of presence, that exists there. And so when they get close to you and when they invade your space, you feel like someone's actually invading your space, even if they might be hundreds or thousands of miles away. And it's important to take measures to allow users to avoid these kinds of interactions that they don't want. So here are some tools. You can provide your player with personal moderation tools. Allow them to stop interaction with someone. Allow them to make the person go invisible. Allow them to make themselves go invisible to the person. Allow them to mute the person, or allow them to enforce a bubble around themselves where no other person can interact with them. Provide a system of interaction, perhaps. BronyCon is very large convention with all sorts of people, and they have a badge system, a color badge system that works very well. They have a green badge, meaning, hey, I'm friendly, come up and talk to me, it's totally cool. They have a yellow badge, that means, only talk to me if we've talked face to face, or only talk to me if I introduce myself to you. And they have a red badge system, which means, not right now, I just don't want to interact with anyone. Implementing similar systems in VR can allow a person to easily change how they're interacting with other people depending on how they're feeling that day. If you're having a slow day and you really don't feel like talking to people, being able to throw on a red badge and prevent interactions that you're not interested in is a really convenient tool to have. Now, there's also community moderation. Obviously, people can block someone or mute someone, but when you have problem members in your community, making sure that they're informed of that their behavior is not okay, or even removing them from that community is good. And we have the possibility to have platform level moderation. If someone is an abusive user in every single game where they're interacting with other people, then maybe they should be removed from those kinds of games and just not allowed to participate. Now, of course, those are things we can do as developers, but as gamers, we can help with the culture of abuse. We can admonish abusers. When they do something wrong, don't laugh. Don't be quiet. Tell them it's not cool. Comfort the people who suffer from this abuse. And then just in general, discourage poor behavior. Don't laugh about it when it's on Reddit or the internet. Don't encourage funny videos of pranking people when they have a headset on and can't see what's going on around them. And if we establish this culture around VR, we can help make sure that it is a safe space for everyone, both within the virtual reality and within the physical space that they're occupying while they're there. So let's keep VR fun for everyone. So I think this is a really important discussion. I mean, obviously, questions don't lend themselves to discussion well, but if you have any questions, please let me.
Can you talk more about what happened in AltSpace VR and what AltSpace is and how that, social VR, how harassment can happen because of that?
Right. So AltSpace. So I haven't been in AltSpace before. It's an interaction. It's like a chat room, but it's in VR and you can have other people moving around. My experience with harassment in VR was actually in a multiplayer shooter game where you could control your hands. So it had touch controllers and people had characters. And it was actually, I wouldn't necessarily call it harassment, but it was at a very professional event. And so these were professional people I was working with, journalists that I was trying to get articles from. And one of them turned to me in VR, who was in a female character, and didn't know who I was. And he just said, look at me, I'm rubbing my tits at you, while making motions around his chest. And certainly locker room banter happens among friends, but what's really interesting about VR is you have the anonymity of not having an avatar that is necessarily specifically yours, and people don't know who you are, but you have the sense of presence where you feel like a real person. And so those kinds of interactions feel much more awkward than they would when someone does a slash command in an MMO. Cool. Thank you. Oh wait, go ahead.
So do you have a good example, or have you experienced anything that was a really good kind of implementation of anti-harassment in VR? Is there a game that you've tried or a community or something that you would cite as a good example?
I know that AltSpace is doing a lot of cool things. Again, I haven't actually been in AltSpace myself. One of the reasons that I wanted to give this talk is because I interacted with a lot of developers who are making social-based VR games who have not considered any of this at all.
Really?
Yeah, which is concerning to me. So I think it's important to bring this up as a topic to consider while in development. Certainly, creating moderation tools is a development expense, but I think it's one that is really important to me.
So have you started a hashtag about something like this, or are there groups that people are actually implementing, or is it individuals right now who are trying to make it happen, like you talking about it and bringing it up?
As far I'm aware, there's not a solid movement to prevent this,
Okay.
but there should be.
Yes.
So.
Yes. The closest movement I would say is the Women in VR Facebook. People go there to share their experiences on what worked and what didn't. So
Okay.
if you ever want to read about stories there, there's usually postings about that on the Facebook page. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you.